Okay. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to our Pre-Law Shadowers virtual shadowing session. This is the first session that we have done in a few months. We didn't do anything for the first semester of this year. School was getting very busy, but we were so excited to be featuring Sally here today, as you're like our new kind of lawyer ever since we kickstarted like a brand new revamped version of Pre-Law Shadowers. So it's an honor to have you and an honor to be hearing from you today. My name is Ayisha. I'm the founder of Pre-Law Shadowers, for those of you that are watching and don't know me. And today I'm going to be interviewing Sally just a little bit about her experience, her personal and academic journey, how she got into law school, what that process was like for her, and kind of what she does today. We'll also be asking some questions that you guys have sent in for us to ask Sally. If you have any further questions, we'll also see if you can get in touch with Sally, maybe if you give your email or something like that, or students can reach out to you directly if they had any further questions or concerns after watching this recording. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'll kind of pass it on to you, Sally, to introduce yourself, and then we'll just go from there.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me. My name's Saloumeh. I go by Sally Madani. I am a first-year call, so I've been practicing for about 1 year now. I've exclusively practiced family law, and I articled in family law as well, so that's where my interests lie. And it's been a great journey so far. Lots of ups and downs, but mostly ups, and I'm really grateful for the experience I've had so far, and I'm happy to share that with you today.
Perfect. We're very excited to be, hearing what you have to share with us. And I kind of want to start off with a question that I think all of us always wonder when we see a successful lawyer like yourself is, did you always know law was for you, or was it something that you kind of realized later on in your life?
Yeah, no, I didn't think that I would get into law. If you had asked me like 10 years ago what I would be doing today, I would not have said a lawyer. But basically, my journey here was I did my undergrad in psychology and sociology at McMaster University. And my goal was to get into research. I did a final research paper in my undergrad. It was on how education affects marriage and relationships. So that was really interesting. So I decided I wanted to pursue research, and I applied for my master's at Guelph, and I got in. And so I did my master's of arts in sociology at Guelph. There, I did a major research paper on the parent-child relationship and how that evolves over time. So I've always been interested in the family unit, and I initially thought that I wanted to research the family unit. So my goal was to do my PhD after completing my master's, but I decided to kind of take a break at that point. I wanted to see if pursuing my PhD was really something that I wanted to do, and getting into research was something that I really wanted to do. So, and I had, I had doubts about it. So I thought I'm going to take a year off and think about it. So I did. I took a year off, and I actually ended up working at a law firm on Bay Street. So I did kind of like an admin role there. And it was there that I decided within a few months that I definitely want to go to law school. So it's kind of thinking about what law schools I wanted to apply for. I knew I wanted to go away. I didn't know where. So really my focus while working for that 1 year, I worked there for exactly a year before I left for law school, was just to kind of figure out what it is that I wanted to do. And at that point, I figured that I would pursue family law because of my background and my research, but I wasn't sure. So I graduated from Windsor Law, and I took family law. I also took a whole bunch of other courses because I didn't really want to limit myself into going into family law. I wanted to see if there was something else that I wanted to explore. And I ended up in family law. So I took all the courses, but I still ended up here.
I think in a way that was kind of destined for you, just seeing
Yeah.
where research, you always had an interest there.
Yeah.
Even if you weren't expecting to be practicing family law, it's really interesting to see how it changed, but still stayed within the
Yeah.
same realm of what you were interested in.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of us right now, including myself, we have no idea if like one of the reasons I do this organization is because even I don't know if I want to be a lawyer, exactly that, right? And I guess the next question that I have for you is, you mentioned your undergrad, right, that you did, and I kind of want to know, what was that like for you? A lot of us are in our undergrad right now. Were you someone who always knew like 4.0 GPA, type A student, or were you someone that struggled during their undergrad and you had to learn and teach yourself a lot of things?
So I had decent grades in my undergrad. That was a really long time ago, so I have to think back. But yeah, I had decent grades in my undergrad. I think I really, once I kind of knew more what I wanted to do, I buckled down a little bit more. So I had really great grades in my master's, because I knew I liked research. So that was easy for me. And in law school, I did pretty well as well. So I think really the way that I see it is, if you're interested in something and if you're passionate in something and you put the work into it, you're going to do well. So in my undergrad, I was kind of flip-flopping. I took a bunch of psych courses, a bunch of sociology courses, gerontology courses, anthropology courses. I took them all. I obviously did better in some compared to others. So I did better in my sociology and psychology courses because that's where my interest lied. So um, I'm a good student, but I wasn't always. In my first year of undergrad, I don't think I did very well.
I think first year is always a hard adjustment period for everyone, and also for those of you watching, I'm sure a lot of us can agree. But it's nice that I guess you end up teaching yourself. It's nice to know that it got better for you, like your master's was even better, and then law school was even better. It just shows that you were on the right path the whole time and you were progressing towards something that you were actually enjoying. My next question is, this could be from either your master's, your undergrad, or law school. Were there any courses that really stood out to you? They don't have to be law related. It could have been like a psych course that you took, that you kind of still think about, just because for some of our students, we're picking courses for next year too. And something similar, like if you took an ethics class, something similar might be offered at a university. And if it helps you later in your life, or you really, it was memorable for you, I think students always like to hear, like, what courses did lawyers take, even though there's no pre-law program or pre-law track you can go on.
Right. Yeah. So I took a lot of psych courses. My favorite was behavioral psychology. I think that sounds interesting to anyone, but I learned a lot about dreams. It has nothing to do with law, but that was definitely my favorite course. Um, I actually didn't take anything like ethics or philosophy in my undergrad because I had no idea I wanted to pursue law school at that point. Um, in law school, I can tell you my favorite course is obviously family law. I was super interested in family law from the get-go. It's a great course, and actually, as much as I felt like I wanted to pursue family law, I was quite surprised with the course because there's a lot of math involved in family law, and I don't think people realize that. I think that people think it's more so like child related or just simple divorces, but that's not actually the case. There's a lot of calculating. You have to calculate assets, debts. You need to do a whole net family property statement. Of course, there's software to help you do the math, but uh, it's a lot of numbers involved in family law, especially particularly when your clients have those assets and marital property that they need to kind of divide. You have to figure out how to do that. So I found family law interesting in law school because I didn't know that it involved so many numbers and so much math and calculations, but yeah, it does. So if anyone is thinking of going into family law, I would suggest definitely take the course before you get into it because it might be a little bit different than what you imagine it to be.
I mean, thank you for telling us about that. 'Cause, I mean, I was considering, maybe, of course, I'm quite like early on in the journey, but I was thinking of family law too. That's the first field of law that I think I ever really knew about when I was younger. But yeah, no idea about the math. And I absolutely hate math. I think a lot of students that are pre-law, I don't think we tend to really like math that much. So thank you for the disclaimer. I think a lot of us are like, okay, that's eye-opening.
Where like you don't have to sit there and calculate everything. There's software that spits out a number for you, but you still need to know what goes into it. Like I can give you an example. In law school for family law, obviously we didn't have access to the software for exams, so we had to hand calculate every equalization payment, and it's difficult. It's definitely challenging. I think there's this misconception about family law and how it's just, you know, custody, or which is now called decision making responsibility or that kind of thing, but it's really not. You're going to get files of all sorts, and you need to know how those calculations are done in order to be a good family law lawyer, in my opinion.
I mean, definitely, I think you can't rely on the softwares. I think you need to understand what it is you're doing.
Yeah.
My like only question about that exam that you were taking was, were you allowed a calculator, or was it, if it's mental
Yeah.
math, that is too much?
Yes, we were allowed a calculator, but nothing else. That's it, just the calculator.
Okay, you know what? As long as there's a calculator, I think that's still, I think we can manage. I think everyone else watching, I think we're good.
Yeah.
But thank you for telling us about that. I kind of want to go into more about your law school experience itself. So, you know, courses aside, a lot of people that are pre-law can feel intimidated by the idea of even going to law school because of the fact that you have this idea where you see on movies or you hear about it, and maybe this is true, that it's a lot of work. It's very different to your undergrad. It's a lot of self-discipline, and you're not helped as much as you would apparently in your undergrad as you are in law school. So my question to you is, what was your personal experience of law school like, especially when it came to finding a balance between your studies and your own personal life?
Yeah, so in first year, pretty much all I did was law school. So, and if I could go back in time, I would change that. I focused a lot on getting good grades, and I really pushed myself because, you know, I don't think it's necessarily like the student's fault for feeling this way, but in law school, unfortunately, I think that they really glamorize the whole OCI process. And OCI is on campus interviews for those that don't know. Um, Between your first year and your second year, around summertime, you apply for positions for 2L positions. So the second year summer positions. It's not articling, it's a step before that. So they really stress that. And basically all you have to use is your first year experience. So I really wanted to work hard on my first year and try to get the best grades that I could, while also juggling all the extra stuff that I wanted to do to make my application look good, like the clubs and the clinics and that kind of thing. And it's really difficult. So like law school is a whole other ballpark compared to, I think, undergrad or even in my master's is completely different. So I think it's important, yes, get good grades, do as well as you can, but focus on your personal life a little bit. Try to do it all, but don't push yourself so much. OCIs are not the be all end all. You will find a job. I can't stress that enough. It's really scary because the OCI process is just so intimidating, and it doesn't even cover all the jobs that are out there for 2L summer. So I would say once you hear the word OCI, don't panic. Just do as good as you can in your first year, because grades do matter, unfortunately. So just do as well as you can and focus on your extracurriculars, but also focus on your personal life. I wouldn't stress too much about first year grades.
Thank you for that. I think a lot of us feel really pressured because of how not only competitive, but it's a lot, it's a long process. And you don't want to feel like you're behind. I think that feeling of feeling like you're not doing enough compared to other students that are in the same class as you, for example, it's in undergrad, it's probably going to happen when you're in law school too. It's just how to navigate that. And just building on what you answered about that balance between your personal life and your studies, what I'm also curious about is what was the social life like in law school? Like we all have an idea of what undergrad social life is like at different universities, for example. But where you went, so at Windsor, what was that like in terms of, did you have time? Like, were you able to make time? Were there a lot of different social activities happening on campus, different clubs?
Yeah, there was a ton going on all the time. So that's why I say, like, it's important to make time for that kind of thing. Make sure you go. You're going to meet people. These people are going to turn into your law school friends, or they might be opposing counsel on a file someday in the future. So I think it's important to make those connections, and go to these events. You get to meet some awesome people, you learn things, you get to socialize, take a break from studying. So yeah, definitely there was a lot of events going on at Windsor Law, and I'm glad that I went to those events, because I've made some awesome friends there. Many of them I still keep in touch with today. So yeah, definitely have a social life. You're going to need that, otherwise you're going to burn out before you even start practicing. And I can tell you, once you're in practice, you're probably going to burn out at some point. So don't burn out before you get there. So yeah, go to the social events, meet people, network. It's great. Sometimes professors even show up. It's a good opportunity for you to introduce yourself, faculty, staff, students. Yeah.
Thank you for speaking on that. I think that even if we're in our undergrad, that also applies. Not having to make yourself think that all you have to do is study and it's just go to class and go home. If you're able to, I think I can speak from my experience for those of you that are watching. Like I said, I'm in my undergrad. I was all the first year only studying, and it was also during COVID when we were online. So it was even more isolating. But now that I'm more involved, I think, like you mentioned, in clubs and going to these group activities, that's what makes your like campus experience or university experience. So even when you're in law school, I think a lot of us think that when you're in law school you don't get that experience anymore, but it's nice to hear that they still do have these opportunities. And you're right, the fact that they could be opposing counsel, like that's so interesting that in 10 years from now you might see each other again.
Yeah.
Or you
Even
might
my first year practice, I've had two people from law school in my same cohort that are opposing counsel. So and I know them because we went to social events together. So it's always nice to make those connections, and it's always going to benefit you. We didn't talk much in law school, but now it's as if like we have that connection, and it's like we're best friends. Like, hey, how are you doing? Oh my God, we have this file together. Let's discuss it. Let's try to come up with a resolution here. I feel like there's a connection there simply because we went to Windsor Law that there wouldn't have been otherwise, or there isn't with other opposing counsel.
Yeah.
So it's important to go see familiar faces, meet people, because you never know what will happen in the future. You might end up acting against them. So
That's true. I think, I guess, be on everyone's best side and never know when you're going to see them again. And networking is super, super important too, which is why I'm glad that we're getting to speak with you right now as well, because this is in a way us networking with you and hearing your experiences. The next question I have is actually going a little bit backward in time. So you mentioned that sometimes professors come to these events and you can introduce yourself as well. I want to kind of backtrack into, speaking of professors, when you do apply for law school itself, as most of us are aware, you need to have academic references as well. That can feel really intimidating to approach a professor and ask them to give you a reference, especially when you're in your undergrad. So can you speak on how you kind of, how you dealt with that? Did you use references from your undergrad or your master's, and how did you approach that?
yeah, absolutely. So I did a research paper in my undergrad, so I had that professor write a reference letter for me because I really got to know him on a personal level. It was just him and I. And I had obviously my master's level. So there were 11 people in my master's program. So all the professors knew each of us very, very well. So I got some references from there. But what I would recommend personally, because when I was doing my master's, I was TAing undergrad classes, some sociology, some family relations classes. So And some of those students asked me for reference letters for law school. And I had no idea that I was going to go to law school in the future at the time. So I find that very interesting. But I have written reference letters and I've received reference letters. And what I would stress is take those smaller seminar courses in your last year of undergrad if you can. There are some courses where there's only a few students in it as opposed to like hundreds and hundreds of students. You will stand out in seminar courses. It's more so, well, I don't know, maybe every university is different, but I'm pretty sure they'd be similar. In seminar courses, you sit around, you discuss the issues, whatever course it may be. It could be geography, it could really be anything, but as long as you have that one-on-one interaction with the professor, as opposed to just sitting in lecture halls with 200 students and getting a good grade, because I think a professor might very well just say, just because you got an A+ in this class, I don't know you. I can't write more beyond, yes, this person did really well in my class. So if you can try to take the smaller courses that interest you and make sure to participate a lot, you will build that relationship with your professor. And they're more likely to write you a better reference letter about not only your work ethic, but your character, the type of person you are, if you participate, if you got a good grade in the class, how you engage with your peers in the class. This kind of stuff is, I think, valuable in a reference letter for law school, because law schools are looking for well-rounded applicants. They're not just looking for someone who gets a really good score on their LSAT or has really good undergrad grades. They want to know that you're able to participate, because that's essentially what law school is. You sit, well, maybe not first year law school, but after second and third year, much smaller classes, you're expected to participate, you get graded for tutorials. It's a huge chunk of your grade, maybe 20%, maybe 30%. So if you're not participating in class, you're just not going to do well in the course, no matter how well you do on that final exam. So you want to make sure that you're a little bit prepped when you're an undergrad doing those seminar courses, but also you want to make those connections with your professors or with your TAs so that they could write you a really good reference letter. That would be my biggest advice. I did take some seminar courses in my undergrad, and I got a reference letter from one of them. So I would definitely recommend doing that.
Now, so thank you so much for answering that. Like I was saying, very helpful information for us that are in our undergrad and maybe don't realize the power this will have and the impact this will have in our future. The next thing I wanted to talk about is the law school admission process itself for you. A lot of people take sometimes they take unconventional pathways to getting into law school. The fact that you took, a gap, you did your master's, took some time off after that too. And then I'm not sure what difference that has on the different components of the application. Some people go to a different country, for example, and they do law school there. They don't have to do the LSAT, but they have to do some licensing exams. Like there's always different ways of doing it. So I guess my question for you is, what was your experience of it? Or the different components you had to put together, and what was that process like for you, I guess, personally, in terms of, was it really difficult? Did you have some support or mentors during that?
Yeah, so I don't think I mentioned this yet, but I did my first year of law school in Australia. I went to Bond University. So in that year that I was figuring out what I wanted to do and working at the law firm, I decided I wanted to go to law school. I knew I wanted to go and I wanted to pursue a legal career, but I didn't know how I could get there and how fast I could get there. By the time I had figured it out, I had missed the opportunity to write the LSATs for the upcoming year. And I'm a little bit older because I did my master's first and took a year off, and I just didn't want to wait any longer. So I applied to Australia at Bond University and I got in. Bond University has a bunch of Canadian law students that go there from all over Canada and other countries, but I would say mostly Canada. They used to be fully accredited, so you could just transfer back after, and it's a 2-year program as opposed to 3, but you don't get summers off. So I went there with the intention of completing my degree there, but after my first year, I guess I could talk about this a little bit, because I dedicated all of my time to studying in my first year. I did get really good grades and I was able to transfer back. So I guess there's a silver lining there. I just thought I would apply to see if I could get in because, like I said, I did intend on completing my degree out in Australia. For me personally, it was one that I had missed the boat on applying for law school that year and I didn't want to wait a whole other year. And two, I really, really wanted to live abroad and study abroad. And I knew because I worked at a law firm and I saw other lawyers who were practicing that I probably wouldn't have that opportunity once I started my career. So I decided I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to go to Australia. I looked at different countries and I decided on Australia because who doesn't want to go to Australia? So I just pulled the gun. I went. My family and friends were very supportive. They were like, this is a great path for you. We support you. You should go. So I did, and I did really well, and I was able to transfer back. Did that answer your question?
It did,
Okay.
it did.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I just wanted to know, I think a lot of our students think there's only one way to get into law school, and there's only one timeline and one pathway you can go on. So I always like to ask lawyers, especially if I know you have a different route, if you can speak on that, because it does give us inspiration that if one pathway doesn't seem like it's going to work for you, that's not like it's a dead end and that's it. You can't be a lawyer anymore, or you can't go to law school anymore. So thank you so much for speaking on that. And you're right. I would love to go to Australia for a year, and the weather there is
It
amazing.
was awesome. It was really, really good. It was a great school, a really good. Bond is a private university, so very expensive, but I got a really great education in my first year. And I really think that what I learned in my first year, I was able to apply to my second and third year at Windsor. Um, but yeah, I think it was time for me to come home, and I enjoyed my 1 year there. I would have loved to spend the 2 years, but I felt like coming home was the right decision for me.
I think if you ended up coming home and everything worked out the way it did, it was definitely the right decision for you. And you still got to get that abroad experience, even if it was just for a year. Clearly, it still has an impact on you today, right? So
Yeah.
definitely, it's true that you might not get that experience later in your career. And I know a lot of students feel like they have to go straight from their undergrad right into law school. And I feel like we're always, I can speak for myself, we're always in a rush to do the next thing. I'm glad you took time off to figure out if you even wanted to do law or not. That was clearly a very defining moment for you, that whole year off. That's why you are in the pathway that you are on right now. So I think for students watching as well, like what I'm getting from what you're saying, Sally, is take time off if you need it. Do what works best for you. If you want to, become a lawyer sooner or whatever, there's other pathways to doing that. If you want to study abroad, that's also an option. And if you want to end up back in Canada, it is possible for you to still be practicing here like you are. So with that, I kind of want to segue more into your career now. So I want to start off with what's a typical day in your career like? So you are a family lawyer. If you could just speak on your kind of day-to-day tasks. I know maybe some days are very different to others, but just a typical day.
Yeah. So I start my day usually with a few consultations. So I probably have one or two consults every day. It rotates for the lawyers, but I get about one or two a day. Um, and then I go on to checking my emails. There's usually 1,000 emails and clients requests. And then after I've checked them and I've responded to them or maybe flagged them to respond later, I start to do my work that I had intended on doing for that day. So that might include court applications, agreements, like any kind of pleading. It usually includes about 2 or 3 client calls a day just to follow up or to discuss next steps on the file. Most of the time I'm in court. I actually do attend court quite often. Yeah, and so prior to working at the firm I'm working at now, I had about 60 clients at once that I would manage by myself. It was really difficult. Now I have about 40. So you can only imagine with that many clients, like you consistently have court appearances. That could include case conferences, motions, settlement conferences, basically anything prior to trial is what I do. At my current firm, we don't do any trials, so we ended at that point. But yeah, it could be anything from doing prepping for court, attending court, drafting agreements, having client calls, answering emails, having calls with opposing counsel to try to narrow down some of the issues on a file prior to attending court. Yeah, that's basically what my day looks like. Every day is different. It's not often that I have a day where I don't have any urgent issues. There's always things popping up. A lot of last minute stuff that I need to do. So a lot of juggling and time management.
For sure. It does sound like you have a really busy day.
Yeah.
And I guess if you didn't have time management, it would probably be impossible for you to get everything done. I'm kind of wondering more about the actual court appearances themselves. I think a lot of us always think that being a lawyer is like Suits or Legally Blonde or something of that sort, where you're like arguing in a court every single time or something like that. I kind of want to see like, what is the real experience of being in court like? What was your first experience of it? Were you scared? Was it exactly what you thought it was going to be? And now is it just something that you just know how to do? It's normal and you're not, I'm assuming at this point you clearly know how to do it. But just if you had to explain it to a student, like what would you say about it? The court appearances themselves, the different things you do in court.
Yeah, so I'm really lucky because I was called to the bar during COVID. So it's all Zoom court now. I haven't attended court in person as a lawyer yet. When I was articling, I shadowed my articling principal in court. So I saw a little bit of that, but as a lawyer, I've actually never been to court. It's just all been Zoom court. But I think it's been really helpful because I get to see what court is like without actually being there. And I can only imagine how nerve-wracking it would be for a new call lawyer to attend court for the first time. It's less stressful, definitely, to be behind a camera as opposed to being in person. But yeah, I'll never forget my first court appearance. I was at case conference. I thought I was gonna die. I couldn't, I felt like difficulty breathing. It was really hard, but there was no one there to shadow me. I was completely thrown into it on my own. It was 2 weeks after I was called to the bar. I studied that file like the back of my hand. I was like, what if the judge asked me this? Or what if the judge asked me that? I have to know everything. And it was a really, really complex file. Actually, now that I think back, I'm like, I wish it was just parenting issues, but no, it was property division. It was like, it was really complicated. Equalization, business valuation, income valuation, like really complex stuff when I think of it. But it was a great experience, honestly. Like, I don't think I could have been thrown into a deeper end than that. So I'm grateful for it, that's for sure. After that, I wasn't so nervous anymore. I think it pretty much prepped me for anything I could have imagined. It's nothing like what you see on TV. It's not that dramatic. The judges, well, especially in case conferences, the judges kind of try to facilitate like resolution. They're there to help. They're there to guide you in the right direction. So you could quite possibly say like to the judge, like, Your Honor, I'm just looking for your opinion on this matter. It's not like what you've seen on TV. That's more so like motions and trials where you're arguing your position. But case conferences are pretty relaxed. The intention behind it is to just like try to settle some of the issues, if not all of the issues. It's great experience. If you can do litigation in your first year, like if you have the opportunity to, and really if you have the opportunity to manage your own files, it sounds awful and it sounds so stressful, and you probably think like, how can I do this? I don't know anything. I've been called to the bar for 5 days, but you can do it and you will do it. And if it was anything like my first position, you'll be thrown into it and you'll be so grateful for it, because I've only been called to the bar for about like 11 months now, I think. And I feel totally comfortable attending any court appearances, and I never imagined that I would, but I do. Of course I get a little bit nervous from time to time, but not really. Like I pretty much, because I've had so much exposure and so little hand holding during the process, I feel quite comfortable and confident in attending these appearances, and it's all thanks to, you know, my employers for pushing me to the deep end, right? So if they had held my hand, I probably wouldn't have felt this comfortable at this point, because I know there's someone there that I could just turn to and say, what am I supposed to do? But when no one's there, you have to know what you're saying. So yeah, it's definitely a good experience to have some litigation in your first year. That's what I would suggest. And be in try to find a position where you could gain that experience.
I definitely think it also speaks to your employers in the sense where they saw something in you. Like clearly, if they thought you were it's gonna be a train wreck, they probably wouldn't have sent you entirely alone. And I think that with every experience that we, whether it's this or even just something in your undergrad or even your master's, anything that we do at any point in our life, it's if it's uncomfortable, that doesn't have to mean that it's bad. Just because, I mean, I'm sure, like you said, you thought you were going to die, and it maybe looking back now, you're like, yes, that was a lot, but you also handle so much right now too. And I'm glad that you had that as a learning experience, and probably a very memorable experience as well, of your first ever court appearance, and how much you had to do, and the fact that you got to do it and you did it. I'm assuming you did it well too, especially considering that you were just called to the bar. So I think that's really nice for even just law students right now that could be watching, or young lawyers who might feel like they can't handle it. I think that your advice about you totally can. It's very helpful and it's very reassuring to hear.
Yeah,
Um,
you totally can handle it, and you will handle it, because there's going to be a point where you're going to have to do it on your own, and it's going to be totally fine. And like the judges are understanding, like they can look at you and they see that you're young, so they know that you're somewhat a new call. They're not going to be too hard on you. It's and honestly, I've never done this, but I feel like you could 100% just say, like, you know, I'm new. I apologize if I didn't understand that correctly, or what you were asking. You know, just explain yourself. Judges are people too, and they know what it's like. They were first year calls at some point. So I don't think it should be as scary as you might think it is, but obviously you're going to be nervous, and that's okay, but you're going to go get through it and it's going to be fine. That's the best advice I can give.
yeah, thank you so much. I think again, it applies to everything. A lot of these things you're
Yeah.
saying, like it's very, very reassuring to hear just as a student in general. And my next question to you is, what is a common misconception about family lawyers that you have heard maybe before or now that you're practicing that you hear? And what would you say to kind of address that?
Good question. I think again, like people don't know that family law includes so much property division. I think every time I say I'm a family law lawyer, people are like, "Oh, divorces," but that's like all they think about. It's just separation and divorces. But there's tons of other stuff that we do. You really don't even need to do litigation to be a family law lawyer. You could just focus on collaborative family law, which is, you know, like a really great way of practicing law, family law. You could also do agreements, cohab agreements, marriage contracts, separation agreements. You could do um, a whole bunch of stuff that doesn't require litigation. So if that's kind of more your style, if litigation is not it for you, then you can always practice family law and not go to court. But I think people have this misconception that family law lawyers are super aggressive and they're always in court and it's just divorces and so dramatic, right? People just think, oh, I've had a lot of people actually tell me, Oh, family law, that must be really tough. Like that must be very stressful. But it's really not. It's not as juicy as everyone thinks it is. So it like I mean, yeah, it's just people going through their lives. Their lives are changing. They're going through separation, and you have to deal with it. Whether it be if they have children, you have to deal with the child-related matters. If they have property, you have to deal with that. It's not that dramatic, and uh, no one's screaming at each other in court. It doesn't work that way. It's actually like the whole point of uh, your role as a lawyer is to kind of facilitate resolution and to try and calm everything down, especially your clients when they get amped up. So I think, yeah, that's definitely a misconception. And I don't think people know that it involves property division unless, you know, they're older and they're married and they know, or maybe they've done a marriage contract and they know what it would entail if they separated. But I think for the most part, people just think it's child related matters, and it's really not. And sometimes it doesn't even include a divorce. Sometimes parties aren't even married. So these are, I think, the misconceptions that I've heard about family law lawyers. Yeah, but it's not really like that. I mean, it's completely different for all of my files. I don't think I have any file that's pretty similar to the other. Every file's so different and unique. So it involves a little bit of everything, I would say.
I think that's, I mean, mine, honestly, one of my questions was going to be about, do you ever have to deal with clients or cases that can be tough? But I'm glad that you just kind of addressed, I'm sure sometimes you might, maybe like one, or just a situation that maybe just as an empathetic person, you might feel like this is a really tough situation for the client to be in. But I'm glad that you addressed this misconception. I think a lot of students also think, oh, like if you're, I've heard this when I was younger too, which younger, like literally 2 years ago, when I told a family lawyer, I told a business lawyer that I wanted to go into family law. And one of the things she said to me was, she's like, how emotional are you? And I'm like pretty emotional. I was 18. I'm like a decent amount for an 18-year-old. And she was like, if you're too emotional, you can't do family law because you're going to be dealing with a lot of really, really tough stuff. And like every single day, you're going to be crying all the time. And I was like, okay. And I was super deterred from it, to be entirely honest. I was like, that's so scary.
No, that's not true. I wouldn't, I definitely don't agree with that. I think you have to have compassion and understanding as a family law lawyer. If you're totally stoic and emotionless, you're not going to do well in this profession, and your clients aren't going to be happy with you. You have to understand where they're coming from. Doesn't mean that you have to have been through a divorce or separation or have children to understand what it's like, but you have to you have to be compassionate, right? You asked me what my days look like. There are many days, I would say most days, where at least one person cries to me on the phone. So you have to be understanding, you have to calm them down. It's part of your role. I would say as a family law lawyer, it's probably about 40% counseling and like 60% practicing law, really, because it's emotional. It's the most stressful time in your client's life, and they're losing everything, or that's how they feel anyway. So they feel like they're losing their property, their children. It's hard on them, and you have to have something in you where you can reassure them and let them know, I totally understand how you feel. I get that this is really difficult for you, but like, let's circle it back to the actual issue at hand. I often have clients that go off on a tangent about 10 years ago, he said this to me, but that's not what we're discussing. We're talking a letter about future parenting time. So you have to be able to manage your clients, and I think you need to have some compassion in you to practice this area of law. Otherwise, your clients aren't going to feel comfortable telling you things or expressing things to you. So yeah, that I definitely don't agree. Respectfully, I don't agree with that, but I mean, I think if you're in it, you see it differently versus maybe the business lawyer had no idea. He just assumes, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, I think you need to have a little bit of a heart to be in family law.
That's
Yeah.
why, like, I mean, now, like, that I started pre-law shadowers and I've spoken to a lot more family lawyers, including yourself. Now I kind of see that if you are someone who isn't, like, first of all, the word emotional itself, like, I think that's subjective, because what's too emotional to one lawyer might not be too emotional to the other. But I definitely agree that if you are not someone coming across as compassionate, like you said, or empathetic, like, you're not going to get your clients' trust either. Um, Especially as I'm assuming you're dealing with a lot of, like, this is people's personal lives. This isn't like juicy gossip. This is what they're actually going through and what they've been going through. And it's not easy. And I think even approaching a lawyer or having to get a lawyer involved is a scary process for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And if you can do that counseling with them, I definitely think that it takes a very special kind of person to get someone's trust like that, and to be able to counsel them, and then of course help them find a resolution. But you need to be patient, I'm assuming, and caring to even get to that point, and to get as many clients as you do have now, and get the strong relationships with clients that you do have now. um,
You have to build that connection with your clients in order for them to trust you to tell you the truth, because a lot of the times in family law it's he said, she said. So you need to build that connection with them, and also they need to be able to trust you. Like, this is their lives, these are their biggest assets, these are their children, and there's a lot on the line. So if they don't trust you, or they don't feel like you understand where they're coming from, whether it's reasonable or not, it doesn't matter for them. This certain issue is heightened and they feel very sensitive about it for some reason. I may not understand it, but I can try to understand where they're coming from. And I think that's what clients really appreciate, is you just hearing them out, listening to them, saying, okay, I understand that picking the children up at 6 p.m. is like the be all end all for you. So that's what I'm going to push on, as opposed to this other issue, which I personally think is a bigger issue. But no, it's like that. It has to be 6 p.m. They'll go on and on about it. And you're like, okay, if this is what's important to you, then this is what we're going to push for. But so you have to have good communication skills, and you have to be very empathetic, I think, to your clients' wishes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for speaking on that. I think a lot of us have this idea of lawyers have to be really cutthroat, and really serious, and just there's a specific kind of image that a lawyer, they're usually male lawyers that you see on TVs or shows, and you think that's the kind of person you have to be, and you can't be a sensitive, or someone that is very empathetic or big-hearted, caring about other people. But you're right that you do need that. And thank you for just telling us more and giving us some insight on the kind of things you have to deal with your clients and the way that you treat them, and I guess insight into your client relationship, right?
Yeah.
I have two more questions. I do realize that we are approaching 4 p.m. If
Yeah.
anybody that is in the Zoom right now has questions, you guys can always put it in the chat. If not, I'm going to read some of the questions that students sent really quickly. So one of the questions was, this person said, I sometimes struggle to realize that maybe I don't want to be a lawyer anymore because of the work-life balance. When I'm older, I still want a family and want to do a lot of other things outside of my career. Is it possible to balance this with having a family and being a full-time lawyer?
So I don't have children, but I have seen many women that have done it before. It's definitely possible. I think it just comes down to time management and setting boundaries for yourself.
Mhm.
I struggle. I would be lying if I said that I had an excellent work-life balance. I really don't. I work really hard. I'm focusing on my career at this point in my life. I work evenings and weekends, and so I might not be the best person to speak on this, but what I can say is I do intend on having a family someday, and I absolutely do plan on making that a priority when that time comes. So I've seen women do it. They do it really well. My boss, for example, she has 2 children. She's running a law firm. You can do it all. You absolutely can. She's a great lawyer. She's a DRO, a dispute resolution officer at the court. So you can do it all. I think you just have to manage your time well. That's all. That's all that it really is just manage your time well and focus on your goals, and always prioritize, your personal life. Try to take some breaks for yourself. I recently went on vacation. It's the first vacation I've went on since I was called to the bar. I had a lot of guilt with it, but I'm glad that I did it, and I'm glad that I made that time for myself.
Yeah, thank you so much for answering and also for being honest about, like sometimes we think that lawyers are superhuman and can do everything. So the fact that you're saying like you haven't figured out that balance yet, I think we need to see the human side of things, that it's not all perfect the way that we see it. And sometimes you guys need help and you really need a break as well, and you can feel burnt out as well. I do see a question in the chat where Megan's asking, she's wondering what your favorite thing about being a family lawyer is, and if you were considering any other fields of law when you were in law school.
Yeah, my favorite thing about being a family law lawyer are my clients, honestly. I know it sounds cliche, but they really are. I have some really awesome clients. They trust me. There's mutual respect there. There's good communication. So definitely my clients, and then helping them and getting really good outcomes for them and seeing how happy they are. Like I've had clients cry to me because they were so happy with the outcome at a case conference or at a motion. So definitely my clients are the best part of my job. Other areas of law, yes. So I honestly was thinking about real estate. I'm really into real estate trends. I'm always researching it. I plan on owning multiple properties someday. But yeah, I was thinking about real estate, but I definitely wanted to pursue family law first. I felt like it was better suited to me based on my prior education and experience. But I might introduce real estate law at some point in the future. I'm not sure. Family law is pretty busy and there's always work to do. So I might just stick with it. And I do love it. So we'll see.
No, it's nice to know what else you were considering, and that they're both really aligned, real estate and family law, with things that you kind of are interested in yourself. I think that's what we're taking away from this. Like, don't go. A lot of people think they should go, for example, into business law because that's where the money is, or whatever people think, right? And you're not going to enjoy your life if you're doing a field of law that seems like the acceptable or the more respectable field. Literally anything, any field of law that interests you, I think if you're enjoying it and you're happy, I can tell from the way you're speaking about it that you do truly enjoy what you do, and that you are happy in your position. I've honestly had some lawyers that I've spoken to myself on the phone that were kind of a little bit bitter, or not to like respectfully, they were a little bit bitter, and they were a little bit like, yeah, law is hard. Like, you are not going to enjoy being in, like, I don't know, insurance law. You're not going to enjoy it at all. And I was like, okay, like maybe you didn't enjoy it because you are not interested in it, right? So maybe something else is better for you. But then I hear, I speak to lawyers like yourself, or someone in real estate law, or someone in wills and estates, and they're like, yeah, I actually enjoy what I do. And it's because you guys kind of went into something that you knew you would actually be interested in. And I think, like, I hope that answered your question in the chat, Megan, as well. But we also had someone ask that as well, about what your favorite part of being a family lawyer is. It's really nice that it's your clients and not something cliche like the money or something like that.
No, yeah, it's definitely my clients. That's for sure what I love talking to them. I love getting results for them. Yeah, my clients are awesome, honestly. I mean, not all of them. I will say not all of them, but most of them. Yeah.
Thank you for being honest about that. Because I was gonna ask, like, have you ever had like really difficult clients, or even
Yes.
clients that aren't telling you the truth entirely, and
Yes.
it's hard to work with them?
Yes, I have had difficult clients who just don't want to hear what I have to say. But in those situations, you have to go with what they're telling you is the truth, even if you're getting information from opposing counsel, or disclosure from opposing counsel that is the complete opposite of what your client is telling you, and it's not adding up. You still have to go with it. Those are your client's instructions. So I think also there's a misconception that lawyers in general are liars, or they're good at bending the truth. But really, we're just a microphone for our clients. We're just we're advocating for them based on what they tell us. So if we're lying in court, it's certainly not because we're choosing to lie. It's because that's the information we're getting and the instructions we're getting.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've had some difficult clients and I really think it's not really anything against them. I think it's the heightened emotions during separation. Uh, a lot is on the line. I mean, some people might not be able to see their children every day, and that's traumatic for them. That's so disappointing. Or someone who has invested so much money into this home might have to sell it and give half of it to the other party. Like that's really, really difficult for some clients. So no matter what you tell them, like, look, you're not going to get this parenting schedule initially, but let's work our way up to it. Let's do a gradual increase in your parenting time. Sometimes they just don't want to hear it. So for me, when you ask about difficult clients, those are the difficult clients that I think of. But it's not because they're terrible people. It's just because they can't fathom that their life is changing so drastically, and it's difficult for them to accept that.
I think sometimes even just if they do withhold some truth, or they do say something that maybe isn't the truth itself, like it's coming from a place of hurt, and it's coming from a place of trying to make sure they don't lose everything, or they still have control of something that is happening. I like that you said that lawyers are the microphone. I think that sometimes a lot of people think that it's scary or it's a bad thing when you have to get a lawyer involved, like, oh no, now you have to get a lawyer, or it's kind of like a taboo, like you don't want to get it to ever get to that point.
Yeah.
But it's really nice when you frame it as what it actually is, which you're advocating, and you're, I guess at the end of the day, it's your client's interests that you have in mind, and it's not like selfish, personal, I'm going to lie and twist the truth or whatever. So I think that's something that even just sometimes students get that mixed up, right? Because we think we see that on TV and we believe it is to be the truth. So I'm glad that we get to hear that from you. The last question that I'm going to be asking you today is going to take you back a little bit, or depending on how often you've thought about this, but if you could imagine or picture your 20-year-old self, so I'm assuming this is when you were in your undergrad, prior to your master's, prior to law school, when you thought you were going to go into research. So this could be thinking about yourself at 20 with your professional goals in mind, but also where you were personally in your life, family or other things going on. So this is like a really trauma question, but I'm just trying to ask this question. I always love asking this. If you could imagine her, what would you go back and tell your 20-year-old self? Imagine that you are who you are today and you get to meet her. What would you say to her?
Oh man. I I feel like you have no idea, girl. You have no idea. But yeah, I would be like, you have no idea how good your future is going to be. Just continue doing what you're doing, and everything is going to be totally fine. I'm really happy with my career. I'm really happy with where I work. My personal life is great. I mean, minus the work-life balance, but I love my job so much that it doesn't affect me. So yeah, I would definitely say you're totally not going to do what you think you're going to do. You're only 20 years old, but I'm 32 now. So yeah, I would say, don't worry. Life is going to be so good. Just hang in there. And don't stress the small stuff. Like, don't worry so much about a grade or two. It's not going to affect you. We go to court now. Nobody knows where I went to law school. Nobody's asking for my transcript. It doesn't matter. The most important thing is how well you perform, and how good your argument is, and how respectful you are with other counsel. So that's what people remember about you. Nobody knows where I went to law school. Opposing counsel doesn't care. The judges don't care. The clients don't care. And no one's looking at my transcript. After that first job, no one's going to ask for it. So don't worry too much about that. Just try to engage in clinic work during law school, do your seminars in your undergrad, and try your best to soak in as much information as you can, because you're going to be fine. That's what I would say.
That's perfect. I love asking this question because I love that it kind of forces you to picture yourself when you were 20.
Yeah.
And I think as lawyers, we're like, you guys are constantly on the move of like okay, focusing on your career right now and your day-to-day stuff. And then I like to like make you reflect on
Yeah, that's a good question.
it's one of my favorite. You'll see in every session we ask this, because it's just everyone is different answers. Some people were in a really good place when they were 20, and it's just keep doing it. And some people were in a very, very different or difficult position. Like we've had lawyers like tear up when they were talking about it, about like, I wish I could hug my younger self and like tell her it's going to be okay. And it's just kind of, a lot of us are at that age right now. I'm turning 20 next month.
I was very confused at 20, I
Yeah.
think, but like I've never been more certain of where I'm at right now. I've never been happier than I am right now. So I would just tell her, like, you have nothing to worry about. Everything is going to be totally fine. And
Yeah.
it will be, for anyone listening, it will be fine. You're going to get to exactly where you need to be. It's probably not what you envisioned for yourself at 20. It's probably going to be different, whether that be your personal life with a partner, or professional life or a career, or even the school you might go to next. Like, just take in the opportunities that come your way and soak it up, learn from it, make your mistakes. Absolutely make your mistakes, because you can't really make mistakes when you're a lawyer. So make them in your 2L positions, make them in articling, make them in undergrad, make your mistakes, learn from it, and you're going to be 100% fine. You're going to be exactly where you need to be in 10 years from now or 12 years from now. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. I just see a message in the chat where, like someone said, I think I really needed to hear that. And I have to agree as well. Again, I chose the age 20 specifically because it's when you're in the middle of your undergrad. And a lot of students are in that position right now where they don't even know if they're going to be taking the LSAT soon or not, if that's the path they want to go on, because it is a commitment to study for the LSAT. It is a commitment to apply and start that process. And I was just saying that I'm turning 20 next month. So I love asking this. I love being like, okay, what would you tell yourself? And in my head, I'm like, okay, I'll also take the advice that you're giving. So even though you're speaking,
don't stress at all. You're going to be totally fine. 100%, whether you pursue law or not, right? Like you're going to be fine. Don't stress.
So much.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think this is a really nice place to kind of end off. I want to thank you so much for speaking to us today. I think it's really important to always give back, like to always help people when you are in this position too. I'm sure that when you were younger or when you're now doing the process, it would have been nice to speak to lawyers like yourself right now. So this is always something that we are always very, very grateful for. We get a lot of good student feedback. This helps a lot of people who don't have lawyers in their family or in their circle and don't get to speak to lawyers and don't get to ask their questions. This is the best opportunity for us to even get that experience. I'm seeing like little thank yous in the chat if you want to quickly read them as well. But yeah, the impact that some of the things that you say, I can just guarantee you, like some of the things I've heard in sessions, like they stick with me. I know that I'm not the only one who feels this way as well. So thank you so much again. And thank you for everyone that is watching our session as well, the recording. We will have this up within, I would say, 24 hours. So by Monday morning, everything should be up. I'll also send you that as well. But thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you, Sally, for your time. And thank you to everyone who attended live.
Thank you so much. It was great to meet you, and thank you everyone for watching. If anyone wants to reach me, should I share my contact information?
Yeah, you can put it in the chat, but what we can do is when we post the recording, we can also put it in the description of the video, and that way students can also reach out to you there.
Okay, no problem. I'll add it into the chat. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this.
Of course. Thank you. All right. Bye, everybody.